Welcome to Movie Car Madness. The Shaggin Wagon from Dumb and Dumber is one of the most unforgettable movie cars of all time. A ridiculous, furry, dog-faced van that perfectly embodies the film's over-the-top comedy. But what went into creating this rolling canine catastrophe? Here are 10 awesome, little-known stories about the Mutts van come to life. Number 1. It started as a 1984 Ford Econoline van. Underneath all that shaggy exterior, the Shaggin Wagon is actually a 1984 Ford Econoline van. The Econoline was a popular choice for businesses in the 80s and 90s, which makes sense, considering the van in the movie is supposed to be a dog grooming business vehicle. But instead of just slapping some decals on the side, the production team went all in on the ridiculous dog theme, transforming it into a full-blown mutt on wheels. Number 2. The fur wasn't just any carpet. The fur-covered exterior of the Shaggin Wagon was one of the biggest challenges for the production team, both in making it look ridiculous and keeping it from falling apart. Instead of using a pre-made carpet or synthetic rug, the production team had to custom dye sheets of faux fur to match the perfect shade of golden retriever brown. This wasn't just a quick slap-on job either. The fur had to be carefully measured, cut, and hand-applied onto the van's entire surface. But here's where things got tricky. Driving at high speeds turned the van into a giant wind tunnel. The fur, despite being glued down with industrial-strength adhesive, started peeling off mid-drive during early test runs. To fix this, the edges were reinforced with extra layers of glue and stitching. But even then, pieces would detach and flap in the wind during faster stunt sequences. During outdoor shoots, any wet or muddy conditions became a nightmare. The faux fur soaked up water like a sponge, making the van heavier and harder to drive. It also picked up dirt and road grime, giving it a noticeable smell that crew members tried to mask between takes. Since the fur had to be applied by hand, getting the ears, snout, and facial features to look even on both sides was a major challenge. The crew had to reposition and adjust the fur multiple times, especially around the eyes and nose, so that it wouldn't look lopsided on camera. Some crew members even nicknamed the van Frankendog because they were constantly patching up areas where the fur wouldn't stick properly. Number 3. The dog nose. The giant dog snout on the front of the Shaggin Wagon wasn't just a last-minute addition. It was one of the most difficult props to design and attach to the vehicle. Instead of using a foam or rubber prop, the production team sculpted a custom fiberglass mold of the dog's nose. Fiberglass was chosen because it was lightweight yet strong enough to endure wind resistance, speed, and sudden stops during filming. The biggest challenge wasn't just airflow. It was keeping the nose from flying off. The nose acted like a giant sail when the van reached high speeds, catching wind and creating unexpected drag. To keep it from ripping off mid-drive, the crew reinforced it with hidden metal brackets. They were bolted directly onto the hood. Extra strength industrial adhesive was also used along the base to ensure stability. Number 4. The floppy, moving tongue. The Shaggin Wagon's drooping red tongue is one of the most ridiculous and hilarious features. But what you might not know is that getting it to flap just right took some serious trial and error from the production team. Originally, the tongue was going to be made of rigid material like rubber or plastic, but during test drives, the lack of movement made it look unnatural and stiff. The goal was to have it bounce and wiggle in the wind, like a real dog's tongue, so the crew went back to the drawing board. To make it work, the production team used a thick but flexible rubber-like material, similar to what's used for wetsuits. Bolted it to a flexible hinge under the front bumper. In early tests, the tongue was either too stiff or barely moving, or too loose and flopping uncontrollably all over the grill. After some fine-tuning, it stayed put at low speeds, but flapped wildly in the wind once the van hit the highway. During filming, Jim Carrey noticed the tongue moving while driving and decided to improvise. In one take, he reached out of the driver's window and petted the tongue mid-drive, pretending to check if it was real. The moment got a huge laugh from the crew, but was ultimately cut from the final film, though it remains a legendary behind-the-scenes gag. Believe it or not, the tongue took a serious beating during filming. The edges started fraying after multiple highway scenes. The hinge mechanism loosened, and the tongue nearly fell off after one particularly bumpy drive. Number 5. The ears and tail gag. Originally, the dog ears and tail were supposed to be motorized and move around while driving. The concept was that the ears would flap and the tail would wag, giving the van even more personality and feel like a giant, goofy pet that reacted to movement. The team even mocked up sketches showing how small electric motors could be installed inside the ears and tail, connected to the car's electrical system. However, budget constraints forced the production team to scrap the idea and keep the ears and tail static. Number 6. The van smelled really bad. Covering an entire vehicle in faux fur sounds fun until you realize it traps every odor imaginable. Because of all the glue, sweat from the actors, and the inevitable collection of dirt, dust, and road grime, the Shaggin Wagon reportedly smelled terrible after just a few days on set. Crew members had to frequently clean and air out the van between takes just to keep it bearable. Jim Carrey even joked by the end of the shoot, the van smelled worse than an actual wet dog. Number 7. A functional dog door. The Mutts van wasn't just a regular van with fur. It was designed with as many ridiculous dog-like features as possible. One of those features was the fully functional doggy door on the side, which actually opened and closed like a real pet door. Now a deleted scene, Harry or Lloyd was supposed to dramatically dive through the dog door instead of using the regular side door. The gag was meant to emphasize their cluelessness. Why use the normal door when there's a perfectly good dog-sized entrance? However, for undisclosed reasons, the scene was cut before the final edit. Some crew members claimed that the shot wasn't working visually, while others suggested that it was too impractical to film safely at high speeds. Number 8. It was really hard to drive. Transforming a normal van into a rolling fur-covered doghouse didn't just make it look ridiculous, it also made it difficult to drive. Between the fur-covered exterior, heavy modifications, and limited visibility, the vehicle was one of the most difficult props to drive during production. The thick fur reduced visibility, especially near the windshield and mirrors. Stunt drivers could barely see out the windshield, and fur obstructed the view of the mirrors, making it impossible to see during lane changes. Plus, the added weight from the modifications affected handling, making it harder to turn, brake, and accelerate properly. Jim Carrey joked that the van handled like a giant stuffed animal on roller skates. And of course, all that extra fur acted like insulation, causing the engine to overheat, and the crew had to frequently check the cooling system to prevent breakdowns. Number 9. The van wasn't built to last. Like many Hollywood movie cars, the Shaggin Wagon was never meant to be a long-term vehicle. Movie cars are often built for specific shots, and not for durability. Yet somehow, despite the rough driving conditions and slapstick abuse in the film, the original van survived and was later sold to a fan for just $1,000. Number 10. The real van ended up in a fan's hands. The original screen-used Shaggin Wagon was bought by a fan who later sold it to a team of restorers. After years of neglect, it was fully restored and displayed at the 2013 Gas Monkey Garage Open House. Today, the van is still out there, alive and well, just waiting for the next road trip with a couple of complete idiots. The Mutts van wasn't just a ridiculous prop, it was a character in itself. From the floppy tongue to the outrageous fur-covered exterior, it perfectly fit Harry and Lloyd's clueless, carefree personalities. Even decades after the film's release, it remains one of the most recognizable and hilarious movie cars of all time. Now, if you could take a road trip in the Shaggin Wagon, where would you go? Let us know in the comments. If you love insane movie cars like this, make sure to like and subscribe, where we break down the coolest, weirdest, and wildest rides in cinema history.